Surveillance cameras captured the ambush of rapper XXXTentacion as he prepared to leave a Deerfield Beach motorcycle dealership last June. The cameras show a vehicle block the rapper's exit, and then men jump out of the vehicle and confront.
There are legends who have changed an entire culture, a society, and left an indelible mark. They are the ones who created massive influence in music, film, sports, and politics, and to this day, their names are still frequently mentioned. But a tragic death suddenly cut short their wide-open and brilliant paths. And the final moments of those famous people were captured clearly, second by second, in CCTV videos. You might have heard about the passing of a star, but you've never seen it from such a direct angle like this. Prepare yourself, because you're about to witness the horrifying deaths of 11 black legends, scenes that you won't be able to forget. 11. Don Cornelius. The tragic death of the Soul Train legend amid echoing gunshots, Don Cornelius, a legend in the entertainment world, wasn't just the founder and host of the famous Soul Train, but also an icon of American music culture. The show ran for over 3 decades, helping shape soul, funk, and R&B music, propelling stars like James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and Michael Jackson to new heights. The name Soul Train is tied to millions of fans, with its energetic dance moves and unforgettable melodies. In his final years, Cornelius faced a series of serious health issues. Illness kept attacking him relentlessly. Cognitive decline, possibly an early sign of Alzheimer's or dementia, made him mentally unstable. On top of that, pain came from a turbulent family life. His 2008 arrest for domestic violence marked the collapse of his relationships, leading to divorce and a solitary life in his home in Valley Glen, Los Angeles. Early morning on February 1, 2012, as the faint light of dawn began filtering through the windows, Don Cornelius was still awake. At 4 a.m., he called his son, his words seeming to foreshadow something bad. "I don't know how much longer I can hold on." No one expected those would be his last words. Right after, Cornelius ended his life with a handgun he had in the house. The gunshot echoed through the empty room, startling the whole neighborhood awake. Neighbors buzzed, gathering around. Immediately, an emergency call was made, and Los Angeles police arrived at the scene at 4:20 a.m. When they got there, they found Cornelius unconscious on the bed, with a fatal head wound and a heavy silence hanging over everything. CCTV from Cornelius's own home captured his final images as he wandered slowly through the empty house before the tragedy struck. Everything happened so fast and suddenly, no one could imagine that a music legend would choose such a tragic end to his life. Rescue teams arrived right away, rushing him into an ambulance. But by the time he was transferred to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the doctors couldn't save him. At 5:30 a.m., Cornelius was pronounced dead. It was all too late. Don Cornelius's death was a shock to the entertainment industry and those who loved him. A man who had once been a symbol of joy, soul music, and contemporary culture now departed in extreme sadness and isolation. 10. Luther Lindsay. Death arriving right on the wrestling mat. Luther Lindsay, one of the first black wrestlers to conquer major American arenas, left an indelible mark on the wrestling world. Trained by Stu Hart, he stood out with his masterful hooking technique and was a pioneer, opening doors for black wrestlers to compete in big leagues like the NWA. Before becoming famous for his decisive punches in the ring, Luther was also a college and pro football player. However, his tough health wasn't enough to overcome fate's cruelty. The intense matches, packed schedules, and work pressure left their toll on his body, ultimately leading to a heart attack that ended a legend's life after just 38 years. On February 21, 1972, the match between Luther Lindsay and Bobby Paul took place at the Charlotte Coliseum in North Carolina in a lively atmosphere. The fight started at 9 p.m., and right from the first minutes, Lindsay showed his superiority. His strength and sharp fighting skills made it hard for his opponent to counter. It seemed like this match was just a showcase for Lindsay as he continuously dominated, starting with powerful attacks and finishing with a perfect Boston Crab. Victory seemed within reach, but tragedy struck right in that moment. Around 9:25 p.m., as Lindsay was delivering the finishing move, his body suddenly convulsed. There was no warning sign, no expression of pain or fatigue beforehand. In a brief instant, he collapsed onto his opponent, lying motionless. The referee and other wrestlers around couldn't believe their eyes. A match that seemed headed for a beautiful end suddenly turned into tragedy. Professional footage of the match, stored in wrestling history archives, captured the entire scene. The people there didn't know what to do. A doctor was called immediately, performing CPR on the spot. But all efforts were in vain. When the ambulance took Luther Lindsay to the hospital, doctors confirmed his heart had stopped. There were no signs of injury from the match. The cause of death was determined to be congenital heart disease. Luther Lindsay passed away suddenly like that, right when his career was soaring, leaving the wrestling community and fans stunned. 9. Medgar Evers. The horrific death of the civil rights hero, Medgar Evers, one of the greatest civil rights activists of the 20th century, dedicated his entire life to fighting for black rights in America. As the leader of the NAACP in Mississippi, he stood up against racism, pushing campaigns for black voter registration and school integration. But these achievements also made Evers a target of hatred. His courage and resilience in the battle to reclaim freedom for the black community earned him countless threats from groups like the Ku Klux Klan. On the night of June 12, 1963, after an NAACP meeting, Evers returned home around 12:30 a.m., still holding T-shirts printed with the slogan, "Jim Crow must go," that he distributed at the meeting. His house in Jackson, Mississippi, was in a relatively quiet neighborhood, but that peace couldn't protect him from the lurking danger. As he parked in the driveway and stepped out of the car, in just a few short seconds, a gunshot rang out, piercing the still night. At 12:40 a.m., a bullet from Ku Klux Klan member Byron de la Beckwith's Enfield 1917 rifle pierced Evers's right shoulder. The bullet not only tore through his carotid artery, but also caused severe damage to his spine. Evers collapsed right on his doorstep. His wife, Merle, and young children were waiting for him inside when they heard the shot. When they rushed out, the sight that met them was their husband and father lying motionless, face down on the ground. The family's screams and cries echoed in the dark night, and police arrived at the scene at 12:50 a.m. The entire horrifying scene was captured on a neighbor's CCTV and reported right after by WLBT television. The image of him lying motionless on the ground became one of the most heartbreaking moments in American civil rights history. Immediately after, Evers was taken to the University of Mississippi Hospital, where doctors tried surgery to save him. But after nearly an hour, he was pronounced dead from massive blood loss. Evers's death was a huge shock, not just to his family, but to the entire black community and those fighting for black rights in America. But deaths like this only ignited the flames of anger and the thirst for justice in the hearts of freedom lovers. Thousands attended Evers' funeral at Arlington National Cemetery on June 15, 1963. Civil rights leaders and supporters from everywhere came together to pay respects to a man who sacrificed his entire life for a noble cause. But it wasn't until 1994 that the killer, Byron de la Beckwith, was convicted after 3 trials spanning 30 years. 8. Malcolm X. The horrific death in the middle of a crowd. Malcolm X, the man who could turn words into powerful weapons, was one of the top leaders in the fight for black rights in America. In a short time, he shook society with his tough views on racism and power. Growing up in the Nation of Islam, he went from a prisoner to a fierce fighting icon. But when differences in strategy and principles with Elijah Muhammad, the NOI founder, forced him to leave the organization, he became a target of his former allies. On February 21, 1965, no one expected that the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU seminar would become the site of a legend's death. Footage from the scene by audience members and local TV clearly shows Malcolm X standing before about 400 attendees at the Audubon Ballroom in Washington Heights, Manhattan, starting his speech at 3 p.m. The room was full of anticipation, not just for his powerful words, but for the tense social context at the time. Midway, a small distraction, burning paper, interrupted the meeting, but that didn't deter Malcolm X. Right as he was about to continue his speech at 3:10 p.m., 3 gunmen suddenly rushed the stage from the crowd. No one could react in time. They fired 21 merciless shots into Malcolm X. Bullets from handguns and a shotgun flew through the air, making Malcolm collapse on the spot. Gunshots rang out repeatedly. Smoke filled the air. Everything spun into chaos. His wife, Betty Shabazz, and daughters, sitting in the front row, witnessed the whole thing. The death of their beloved husband and father happened right before their eyes. People rushed in to try to hold the attackers, while emergency personnel arrived just 5 minutes later. Malcolm was rushed to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. Though doctors tried their best, he couldn't make it. At 3:30 p.m., after massive blood loss and organ damage, he was pronounced dead. Malcolm X's sudden death shocked the world. The killers were caught. 2 of them were sentenced to 20-40 years in prison, but they were soon released. The other confessed, but got a light sentence. That injustice only deepened the pain of the loss. Malcolm X's funeral, held on February 27, 1965, at the Faith Temple of God in Christ, drew over 2,000 attendees. Civil rights leaders, supporters, and admirers came to bid farewell to one of the strongest figures in the fight for black rights. But Malcolm X's death wasn't just the end of a life. It was a bloody reminder of the existence of extremist forces against freedom and justice, a reminder that those who dare to stand up will always face unimaginable dangers. 7. Martin Luther King Jr. Death coming unexpectedly while smiling on the balcony. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights hero, a symbol of nonviolent struggle, and the one who lit the flame of hope for millions of black people in America. With history-changing speeches, especially I Have a Dream, he not only led the civil rights movement, but was a resilient voice against injustice. His campaigns, like black voter registration or the Memphis sanitation workers' strike, changed the entire face of American society. On April 4, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. woke up early and prepared for the day's work. He met with associates, planning the march scheduled for April 5th. At 5:55 p.m., he stepped out onto the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, a safe haven for black people where he was staying temporarily. On the balcony, he chatted cheerfully with driver Solomon Jones and famous associates like Ralph Abernathy and Jesse Jackson. He asked about dinner and joked about the weather, no one suspecting that moment would be the last time they'd see Martin Luther King Jr. smile. At exactly 6:01 p.m., a sudden gunshot rang out from afar. Footage from the scene by witness John C. Smith captured Martin Luther King Jr. suddenly collapsing on the balcony. The bullet from James Earl Ray's Remington 30-06 rifle pierced his spine, making him unable to stand. His associates around him hadn't even grasped what happened when the gunshot echoed through the air again. Abernathy panicked, yelling, "Dr. King has been shot," while Jackson pressed his hand to the wound to stop the gushing blood, but it was all too late. At 6:05 p.m., the rescue team arrived and immediately started CPR, loading Martin Luther King Jr. into the ambulance. The whole area seemed paralyzed. The people who loved him, those waiting for a peaceful march, had to witness the death of their respected leader. The ambulance took him to St. Joseph's Hospital, but no matter how hard the doctors tried, death was inevitable. An hour later, Martin Luther King Jr. was pronounced dead. The hero of the civil rights movement, who dedicated his whole life to the fight for justice, left with a smile still lingering on his lips. Right after, James Earl Ray, the one who caused this horrific death, was arrested on June 8, 1968, in London. But that couldn't ease the pain of the loss the world had to bear. Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral on April 9, 1968, in Atlanta was an unforgettable event. Over 150,000 people, from civil rights leaders to ordinary folks, came to say goodbye one last time, together igniting the flame of hope and honoring the resilience he passed on. The horse-drawn hearse, as per his wishes, quietly carried him into the earth. But his spirit, his calls for peace and justice, will live forever in the hearts of freedom lovers around the world. 6. Michael Jackson, Death Coming. When the "This Is It" dream was still unfinished, Michael Jackson, the king of pop, changed the music industry forever. His image in glittering outfits with legendary dance moves is an irreplaceable icon in the hearts of millions. From Thriller to Billie Jean, his songs aren't just music, but have become a global cultural legacy. On June 25, 2009, after a grueling rehearsal at the Staples Center, he returned to his mansion in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles, around 12:30 a.m. Exhausted, unable to endure the ongoing fatigue from a packed schedule and chronic insomnia, he complained and asked his personal doctor, Conrad Murray, to help him sleep. But Murray, who had promised to help Jackson overcome his sleep nightmares, did something dangerous. The anesthetic propofol, used in surgery, was injected into Michael's body like a magic pill for good sleep. Even knowing the side effects and dangers of propofol, Murray used it anyway. At noon, Jackson drifted into the sleep he always dreamed of, but it wasn't a peaceful sleep. After 10 minutes, Murray left the room to make a phone call. When he returned, a terrifying scene unfolded. Jackson wasn't breathing, his heartbeat faint. Murray immediately performed CPR and called Alberto Alvarez, Jackson's butler, for help. But it was too late to save the man the world admired. The 911 call was made at 12:21 p.m. in a desperate attempt to save him. CCTV from the home showed the chaotic scene, with the whole family in disarray by Jackson's bed. Paramedics arrived at 12:30 p.m., trying their hardest to get Jackson to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. But no matter what the doctors did, they couldn't revive the great artist. After an hour of resuscitation, Michael Jackson was pronounced dead, the cause being acute propofol intoxication. This incident, labeled a homicide, unintentional killing, shocked everywhere. Murray, who abused a star's trust, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in 2011. But nothing could make up for this loss. Millions of fans worldwide had to say goodbye in boundless regret. Michael Jackson's death was the end of a music legend, also a reminder of the hidden dangers behind the glamour. His dreams, upcoming concerts, and everything he cherished but hadn't finished, now just part of memory. When death came, it took not just a star, but a piece of the world's music soul. 5. Aaliyah, Death in the Sky for the Queen of R&B. Aaliyah, the talented singer with a mysterious beauty, was a music icon in the late 90s. With smash hits like Try Again and One in a Million, she conquered millions of hearts worldwide. Known for her unique music style, Aaliyah was one of the brightest stars in R&B, but her bright life was cut short when she was only 22. On August 25, 2001, after finishing filming the Rock the Boat music video in the Abaco Islands, Bahamas, Aaliyah decided to leave early instead of staying until August 26 as planned. She and her team, from makeup artists to bodyguards, boarded a Cessna 402B plane, chartered from Black Hawk International Airways, to head back to the U.S. They had no idea this flight would turn into tragedy. Despite some hesitation about the plane being overloaded with filming luggage, Aaliyah was convinced to board. The plane took off at 6:45 p.m. from runway 9 at Marsh Harbor Airport, Bahamas. And just seconds later, disaster struck. The left engine of the Cessna suddenly smoked, and the plane began plunging out of control. At that point, the plane had only reached about 60 feet, too short a distance to save anything. The plane hurtled toward land, crashing into bushes 200 feet from the runway. A huge explosion rang out, smoke and fire shooting sky high. Footage from the scene showed thick smoke and repeated explosions. Local residents and Bahamian media arrived quickly, but no one could do anything, just helplessly watch the haunting sight. The plane burning fiercely, and inside, Aaliyah and 4 others gone from head trauma and severe burns. The other 3 in the group were still clinging to life and rushed to aid, but they didn't survive due to serious internal injuries. The cause of this tragedy was determined to be overload and pilot error, a pilot without certification for that plane type. A chain of wrong decisions led to the painful end. Aaliyah's funeral was held on August 31, 2001 at St. Ignatius Loyola Church in New York, with thousands attending. During the ceremony, 22 doves were released into the sky, symbolizing her short but impactful life and the marks she left on the world. A great talent forever extinguished, a bright star swept into darkness. But what she left behind lives on in music and fans' hearts. 4. Kobe Bryant. The heartbreaking tragedy in the Calabasas sky. Kobe Bryant, a name etched in basketball legend, was a symbol of effort and resilience. With 5 NBA championships and 2 Olympic gold medals, Bryant wasn't just a hero to fans, but a model of nonstop dedication. But while his light still shone bright on the court, darkness suddenly descended. On January 26, 2020, Kobe and his daughter, Gianna, 13 years old, along with close friends, Coach Christina Mauser, Coach John Altobelli, and his family, boarded a flight to the Mamba Sports Academy in Newbury Park, California. At 9:06 a.m., the Sikorsky S-76B helicopter took off from John Wayne Airport, carrying those Kobe loved most. The flight was supposed to be a fun trip like so many others. However, that day, the Los Angeles sky was filled with thick fog, visibility barely under a mile. The flight started smooth, but just 20 minutes in, the helicopter had to circle Burbank due to air traffic. The weather made things worse, fog blanketing everything, forcing the pilot to request special VFR clearance. However, at 9:40 a.m., the helicopter suddenly lost contact with air traffic control, and just 5 minutes later, the Sikorsky plunged into hills in Calabasas at 184 km/h, slamming into the ground. The impact boomed fiercely, a huge explosion tearing through the air. Black smoke billowed up, covering the area. Footage from drones, traffic cameras, and witnesses nearby captured the entire horrifying and chaotic scene. The helicopter shattered, bodies unrecognizable. Police and rescue teams arrived at the scene at 10 a.m., but it took until 3 hours later to recover all 9 bodies. Each had severe injuries from impact trauma and burns from the fire. The NTSB concluded the tragedy's cause was pilot Ara Zobayan, despite his experience getting disoriented in the thick fog. That flight took a basketball star, a father, a friend, a mentor, away forever, leaving fans with a brilliant legacy and deep, unfading regret. 3. Chadwick Boseman. The silent battle and quiet death amid the glamour, Chadwick Boseman wasn't just a movie star, but a symbol of strength and resilience. He left an indelible mark with his role as Black Panther, bringing a grand image to American and global audiences. But behind the glamour of these roles was a truth few knew. Boseman had quietly fought colon cancer for 4 years, hiding all the pain, pushing to finish his work despite failing health. On August 28, 2020, Chadwick Boseman was at his home in Los Angeles, resting after finishing chemo and surgery. Home cameras recorded his activities that night, including the pain. Like so many times before, he felt intense abdominal pain hit. But this time, the unbearable pain made him collapse. His wife, Taylor Simone Ledward, quickly called emergency at 9 p.m. But time didn't wait. Doctors took Boseman to UCLA Hospital at 9:30 p.m., but his condition had worsened. His respiratory system gradually failed. Doctors' efforts couldn't stop death approaching. A few minutes later, Chadwick Boseman took his last breath, and a film era lost a hero. Looking back, it feels like Boseman's death was foreshadowed. At the time, the world had no idea he'd fought silently all that time, downplaying pain to deliver peak works to audiences. Boseman's final scenes in Da 5 Bloods in October 2019 in Thailand created a strange illusion, as if he'd seen the light at the tunnel's end, as if death was waiting. The scene of him under heavenly light saying, "Forgive me, God is love, love is God," like a sign of his life's end, the life of an icon, one who brought hope and inspiration to millions worldwide. 2. Tupac Shakur, shot dead in a gang war. Tupac Shakur was a legend in the hip-hop world. With hits like California Love, Changes, he wasn't just an artist, but a voice of rebellion for a generation. But his rebelliousness, gang ties, and endless conflicts made him a target in a bloody war. On September 7, 1996, Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight attended the Mike Tyson vs. Bruce Seldon boxing match at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. The fight was lively and bloody like any boxing match, but no one knew that behind the stage lights, another bloody plan was being woven. Before the fight, Shakur's Death Row Records group had a brawl with Orlando Anderson, a Southside Crips member, in the MGM lobby. Anderson was beaten for stealing a Death Row chain earlier. A small event, but it sparked the East-West gang war. After the fight, Shakur and his group left the MGM to head to Suge Knight's Club 662. When the clock hit 11:15 p.m., Suge Knight's BMW was pulled over by police on Las Vegas Boulevard for loud music and no plates. They got a ticket and were let go. Things seemed not too serious until a white Cadillac pulled up beside them, stopping at the Flamingo Road and Koval Lane intersection. Dash cams on the dark road captured the entire still moment before the storm. From the Cadillac, a barrage of bullets fired out. 13 shots hit Tupac Shakur's body. Suge Knight was lightly injured, just from shattered glass. The shooters acted quickly and decisively, signs of a long-planned hit, and right after, the Cadillac vanished into the hazy night. Shakur was taken to the University of Nevada Hospital in critical condition. Doctors immediately performed emergency surgery, but it was too late. Tupac woke once at 2 a.m. on September 8th. After that, he fell into a coma. Continuous rescue efforts couldn't stop death approaching. At 4:03 p.m. on September 13, 1996, Tupac Shakur died from respiratory failure and cardiac arrest due to blood loss. His death became a tragedy etched in hip-hop history, reminding people of the high price of gang conflicts. 1. Harry Belafonte. The music legend passes away from heart failure. Harry Belafonte is an indispensable name in the history of music and the 20th century civil rights movement. As a legendary calypso singer, he contributed not just with famous melodies, but with a strong voice against social injustice. Songs like Day-O and Banana Boat Song became icons of an era fighting for black and poor people's rights. Moreover, Belafonte was a close friend of Martin Luther King Jr., always alongside in struggles for freedom and equality. But his life, full of achievements, couldn't escape the end everyone faces: the body's weakening with age. On April 25, 2023, Belafonte woke up at 7 a.m., had breakfast with his wife, Pamela Frank, and read the newspaper. No one could imagine it would be his last day. When the clock hit 10 a.m., a sudden shortness of breath hit. Belafonte sat resting on the sofa, his face wrinkled with fatigue, no longer the dynamic icon of old. His wife, worried, immediately called the family doctor. Around 11 a.m., medical staff arrived at Belafonte's home. They provided oxygen and monitored him carefully, but his condition grew more serious. CCTV in his apartment captured that moment. Belafonte just sitting quietly staring into space, fatigue clear on his face. His whole family around him, everyone understanding that perhaps these were his final hours. His dazed state lasted about an hour. At noon, his heart stopped, but no emergency resuscitation was performed as Belafonte had requested beforehand. After a long battle with the heart disease that tormented him for years, he was ready to accept departure, closing a full life and years of total dedication to to music and justice. When the doctor confirmed death, by his side was his full family with wife and children. This was probably a fulfilling end when he felt his life had given full value to the world, with nothing left to regret. After his funeral, public memorial events were held, especially through UNICEF programs, as a way to honor a man who was not just a music legend, but a leader in the fight for fairness and rights of the oppressed. April 25, 2023 was no longer an ordinary day, but the end of a great chapter in history. So we've just witnessed those unforgettable, tragic moments in the lives of these legends. The painful deaths, captured second by second, still haunt fans to this day. They were top stars, big names, but money, status, or fame couldn't stop cruel fate, and sometimes the very wealth and fame people crave were the cause of their tragedies. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts and expressing regret for the idols we once admired. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next videos, where we'll continue digging deep into the world of celebrities to look back together at the valuable life lessons these legends left behind.